I never thought I'd see the day when my own daughter would be ashamed of me in public. After everything I've sacrificed to give her the life she enjoys, after all the late nights working to pay for her education and lifestyle, she had the audacity to call me embarrassing at a family dinner. But fate has a funny way of serving justice when you least expect it, and the look on her face when the restaurant manager called me boss was worth every moment of disrespect I'd endured. I'm a 54-year-old mother of two who has worked my way up from nothing. My husband passed away when our children were young, leaving me to raise our daughter Melissa and son Jake on my own. I've never been one to complain about hard work. I believe it builds character and teaches valuable life lessons. Unfortunately, it seems my daughter missed those lessons entirely. Melissa is 26 now, and she's developed quite the entitled attitude since graduating from the university I paid for and landing a job at a marketing firm. She's become increasingly critical of everything about me, my clothes, my mannerisms, even the way I talk to service workers. According to her, I'm not sophisticated enough for her new social circle, something she reminds me of constantly. Last weekend was supposed to be a special celebration. Jake had just received a promotion at work, and I wanted to take both my children out for a nice dinner to celebrate his achievement. I made reservations at Bellissimo, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown that I knew they would love. What Melissa didn't know was that this restaurant held a special significance that would soon become crystal clear. To understand why my daughter's behavior hurt so deeply, you need to know our history. After my husband's sudden death, I was left with a mountain of medical bills, a mortgage, and two children under 10 years old. I had been a part-time administrative assistant before, but now I needed something that could support our family entirely. I started working 3 jobs: daytime office work, evening waitressing, and weekend catering events. I'd leave the house at 6 a.m. and often wouldn't return until after midnight. My mother helped watch the children, but they still had to grow up faster than most kids their age. Jake would help prepare simple meals, and Melissa would handle the laundry. We were a team, or at least I thought we were. Despite our financial struggles, I made their education my priority. When Melissa showed interest in dance classes, I picked up extra catering shifts to afford the $350 monthly lessons and competition fees that added up to over $5,000 each year. When Jake needed braces, I worked overtime for 6 months straight to cover the $4,800 the insurance wouldn't pay. As the years passed, I managed to save enough to help both children through college. For Melissa, this meant $86,000 in tuition and living expenses over 4 years at a prestigious university. For her graduation present, I spent $3,200 on a European vacation for her, money I had been saving for 3 years by cutting out any personal luxuries. Throughout this time, I was also secretly taking night classes in business management. The children knew I was working late, but I wanted to surprise them when I finally earned my degree. It took me 8 years of part-time study, but I eventually graduated and began looking for opportunities to advance my career. When Melissa returned from college, she seemed different. She'd made friends with classmates from wealthy families and suddenly became conscious of our modest home and lifestyle. She moved into her own apartment, which I helped furnish with $2,800 worth of new furniture, but she rarely invited me there. When she did, she would give me makeovers before her friends arrived, as if she was embarrassed by my appearance. Jake remained grounded despite his own success. He attended a state school on scholarship and worked part-time throughout his education. After graduating, he found a job in engineering and has been steadily advancing his career. Unlike his sister, he never seemed ashamed of our background or my occupation. The tension with Melissa had been building for months before that fateful dinner. 3 weeks earlier, she had invited me to lunch with some of her work colleagues. I was thrilled for the opportunity to finally meet the people she worked with, but my excitement quickly faded when I arrived at the restaurant. "Mom," she whispered harshly as I approached their table. "Why are you wearing that? I told you this was a nice place." I looked down at my outfit, a clean, simple blouse and dress pants that I thought looked perfectly appropriate. Before I could respond, she continued, "Just don't talk about your work, okay? These are important people." Throughout that lunch, she introduced me as my mother who's in business administration, technically true, but deliberately vague. Whenever I tried to join the conversation, she would cut me off or redirect the discussion. After her colleagues left, I confronted her. Melissa, why were you acting like you were ashamed of me? I wasn't ashamed, Mom. I just need to maintain a certain image at work. These people come from good families, and I'm trying to fit in. And I'm not from a good family? I asked, hurt evident in my voice. She sighed dramatically. That's not what I meant. It's just, you don't understand how things work in professional circles. There's a certain way people expect you to present yourself and your background. I let it go that day, but the incident left a deep wound. After everything I'd sacrificed, my own daughter was treating me like something to be hidden away. A week later, she called to cancel our planned shopping trip because her friend Brittany had invited her to a spa day. It's a networking opportunity, Mom, she explained. Brittany's father owns half the real estate downtown. I can't pass this up to look at discount clothes with you. The discount clothes comment stung. The shopping trip had been planned so I could buy something nice for Jake's celebration dinner. Instead, I went alone and carefully selected a blue dress that was on sale for $89, still a splurge for my usual budget. The night of the dinner arrived, and I was determined to make it special for Jake. I wore my new dress, styled my hair, and even applied makeup, something I rarely bothered with during my busy work schedule. When I picked up Melissa from her apartment, her first words were a criticism. That's what you bought? The color makes you look washed out, and that style is so outdated. I swallowed my hurt. It's Jake's night. Let's focus on making it special for him. She rolled her eyes. Whatever. Just don't do that loud laugh of yours. It's embarrassing. When we arrived at Bellissimo, Jake was already waiting. He hugged me tightly and immediately complimented my dress. You look beautiful, Mom. Blue has always been your color. We were seated at a lovely table near the window. The restaurant was elegant, with crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths. As we settled in, Melissa looked around nervously. This place is really expensive, Mom. Are you sure you can afford this? Don't worry about the bill, I assured her. Tonight is about celebrating Jake's success. When our server approached, I smiled and asked about the specials. Melissa visibly cringed as I chatted with the young man, asking his recommendations and joking lightly about needing reading glasses for the menu. After he left, she leaned across the table. Do you have to be so familiar with the waitstaff? It's weird and makes everyone uncomfortable. I'm just being friendly, I replied, confusion in my voice. Well, it's embarrassing. You're talking to him like he's your best friend instead of someone serving us. Jake interjected, Mel, stop it. Mom's not doing anything wrong. You don't get it, she hissed. This is why I can't bring my work friends around her. She doesn't know how to act in places like this. The hurt must have shown on my face because Jake started to defend me more forcefully, but I placed my hand on his arm. It's okay, I said quietly. Let's just enjoy our meal. Throughout dinner, Melissa continued making small comments. When I couldn't pronounce an Italian dish, she rolled her eyes. When I asked for more bread, she muttered, "Of course you want more carbs." Each comment was like a small knife, but I maintained my composure for Jake's sake. The final straw came when I was telling a story about a challenging project I'd recently completed at work. Melissa interrupted me mid-sentence. Mom, nobody wants to hear about your boring office job. It's not like you're running the company or anything important. The table fell silent. Even Melissa seemed to realize she'd gone too far. Jake's face hardened, and he started to speak, but at that moment, the restaurant manager approached our table. Excuse me, the manager said, a tall, well-dressed man in his early 40s. I just wanted to check that everything is to your satisfaction this evening. I smiled warmly. Everything is wonderful, Michael. The food is exceptional as always. Melissa's eyes darted between us, confusion evident on her face. Michael smiled back. I'm so glad to hear that, Mrs. Reynolds. When I saw you come in, I made sure the kitchen prepared everything to your exact preferences. You know each other? Melissa asked, her voice tight. Before I could answer, Michael continued, of course. I've had the privilege of working with your mother for the past 3 years. He turned to me with respect in his eyes. The executive team meeting is still on for Monday morning, boss? The look on Melissa's face was indescribable, a mixture of shock, confusion, and dawning horror. Her mouth opened and closed several times before she finally managed to speak. Boss, she repeated weakly. Michael nodded. Your mother is the owner and CEO of Bellissimo Restaurant Group. We have 8 locations across the state now, with 2 more opening next quarter. He turned back to me. The new Chicago location's renovations are ahead of schedule, by the way. We should be able to open by October. That's excellent news, I replied calmly, though my heart was racing. Thank you for the update, Michael. As Michael excused himself, a heavy silence fell over our table. Jake was smiling into his wine glass, clearly enjoying the moment. Melissa stared at me, her face pale. You own this restaurant? She finally asked. But you've always worked in offices. You're an administrative assistant. I was an administrative assistant, I corrected gently. That was 15 years ago. After I finished my business degree, I worked my way up to operations manager at Reynolds Hospitality Group. 7 years ago, I used my savings and a small business loan to buy my first restaurant. The business has grown since then. But why didn't you tell me? I've tried, Melissa. Many times. But you were always too busy to hear about my boring office job. And lately, you've made it very clear that you're embarrassed by me and my background. Tears welled in her eyes, but for once, I didn't rush to comfort her. All those times I invited you to dinner here, I continued, you were too busy with your important friends. All those conversations you cut short because you assumed I couldn't possibly have anything valuable to contribute. All those comments about my clothes and my home, as if I couldn't afford better if I wanted to. I didn't know, she whispered. You never asked, I replied simply. You were so concerned with appearances that you never bothered to learn who I really am. The revelation at dinner was unplanned, but once the truth was out, I knew I needed to address this situation head-on. That night, after dropping a subdued Melissa at her apartment, I returned home and made a decision. It was time for my daughter to understand the value of hard work and respect. The next morning, I called my financial advisor and made some adjustments to my arrangements. I had been making the $1,450 monthly payments on Melissa's student loans since she graduated, allowing her to use her salary for her apartment and lifestyle. I instructed him to stop those payments immediately and to send Melissa formal notification that she would now be responsible for the remaining $43,500 balance. I also called my property manager. The affordable apartment Melissa lived in was actually one of my investment properties. I had been charging her only $800 per month, about half the market rate, and covering all utilities. I instructed him to send her a new lease agreement reflecting the actual market value of $1,650 plus utilities, effective in 30 days. Next, I contacted my assistant and asked her to compile a complete financial record of all the support I had provided to Melissa over the past 5 years. The total was staggering. $86,000 for university tuition and expenses, $43,500 in student loan payments I'd made on her behalf, $32,400 in subsidized rent, approximately $18,000 in various bills I'd covered, $3,200 for her European vacation, $2,800 for furniture, and countless smaller expenses like her cell phone plan, car insurance, and medical costs. The grand total came to over $195,000, and that didn't include the 18 years I'd spent raising her before college. 3 days after the dinner, I invited Melissa to my home for a conversation. She arrived looking nervous, a stark contrast to her usual confident demeanor. I invited her to sit at the dining table, where I had prepared a folder of documents. I thought it was time we had a frank discussion about our relationship and your future, I began calmly. Mom, I'm so sorry about what happened at the restaurant, she blurted out. I had no idea about your business. I feel terrible. I appreciate the apology, but I'm concerned that you're missing the point, I replied. Would my career choice make a difference in how you should treat me? If I were still an administrative assistant, would that justify your behavior? She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. The issue isn't that you didn't know I was successful, I continued. It's that you believed I was someone to be ashamed of because of what you perceived as my social and financial status. I opened the folder and slid the financial summary across the table to her. This is a record of the financial support I've provided since you turned 21. Nearly $200,000 in 5 years, Melissa. Her eyes widened as she scanned the document. I had no idea it was this much. You never asked. You simply expected it and, increasingly, seemed to feel entitled to it. I then explained the changes I had made regarding her student loans and apartment. The color drained from her face as she realized the implications. You're cutting me off, she asked, her voice small. I'm asking you to take responsibility for your own expenses, as adults do, I corrected. You make a good salary at your marketing firm. There's no reason why a 26-year-old professional should need her mother to subsidize her lifestyle, especially when that mother is such an embarrassment to her. But my apartment, I can't afford double the rent. You have options, I explained. You can find a roommate, move to a less expensive place, or budget differently. These are the kinds of decisions I had to make when I was building my business while raising 2 children alone. Tears streamed down her face. I don't know if I can do this. You can, I assured her. You're smart and capable. You've just never had to try. I reached across the table and took her hand. This isn't about punishment, Melissa. It's about helping you become the person I know you can be, someone who values people for their character, not their status or bank account. Someone who understands that true dignity comes from how you treat others, not from the label on your clothes or the address on your business card. What can I do to fix this? She asked through her tears. Start by taking responsibility for your finances, your attitudes, and your behavior. Then, perhaps consider volunteering some time to help others who haven't had the advantages you've enjoyed. I think you might be surprised by how much you can learn from people you've been conditioned to look down on. Before she left, I gave her one final piece of information. I'm establishing a trust for both you and Jake. However, there are conditions attached. You'll need to demonstrate financial independence and personal growth before you receive any distributions. The trustee will evaluate your progress annually. As she drove away, I felt a mixture of sadness and hope. The lesson was harsh, but sometimes that's what it takes for real growth to occur. 3 months passed before I saw significant changes in Melissa. She found a roommate for her apartment, opened up about her financial situation to friends, discovering in the process which ones were true friends, and started volunteering at a women's shelter on weekends. The first time she invited me to her new apartment, I noticed the difference immediately. Gone were the expensive decorative items and designer furniture, replaced by a cozier, more personal style. She had framed family photos on the walls, including several of me that I'd never seen displayed before. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she told me over coffee at her kitchen table, about how I treated you and why. She explained that she'd always felt inadequate at her private university, surrounded by students from wealthy families. Rather than being proud of her hardworking mother, who had sacrificed to give her opportunities, she had internalized the subtle classism of her peer group. When she entered the corporate world, this insecurity intensified, and she began to see me through their presumed judgment. But the irony is, she said with a sad smile, I was the one judging you, not them. I created this whole narrative about what they would think without ever giving them, or you, a chance. The real breakthrough came when Melissa began mentoring young women at the shelter. Many were single mothers working multiple jobs to support their children, just as I had done. Through helping them develop financial literacy and job skills, she gained a new appreciation for the challenges I had overcome. 6 months after our confrontation, Melissa asked if she could join the restaurant business, starting from the bottom to learn every aspect of operations. I agreed, on the condition that she would receive no special treatment and would be held to the same standards as any other employee. She began as a hostess at one of our smaller locations, working evenings and weekends while maintaining her marketing job during the day. It was grueling, but she never complained. After 3 months, she moved to serving, then bar management, experiencing firsthand the work that I and my employees did every day. The transformation in her attitude was remarkable. She developed genuine relationships with her coworkers, many of whom came from backgrounds she would have previously looked down upon. She learned their stories, their struggles, and their dreams. More importantly, she learned to value their skills and perspectives. One year after that fateful dinner, we gathered again at Bellissimo to celebrate Jake's engagement to his longtime girlfriend. This time, Melissa arrived early to help the staff prepare for our special evening. When she greeted me, the hug she gave was genuine and warm. "I'm so proud to be your daughter," she whispered in my ear. "Thank you for not giving up on me." During dinner, Jake raised his glass in a toast. To Mom, who taught us that true success isn't measured by what you have, but by what you give. And to Melissa, who finally learned that lesson. Everyone laughed, including Melissa. Later that evening, as we were leaving the restaurant, one of the newer servers approached Melissa. "Your mother is amazing," she told her. "Everyone here respects her so much. You're lucky to have her as a mom." Melissa smiled, looking at me with new eyes. "I know," she replied. "I'm the luckiest daughter in the world." The lesson I hope others take from my story is simple. Respect is earned through character, not purchased through status. True family supports each other regardless of social position or financial circumstances. And sometimes, the best revenge against entitlement isn't punishment, but education, the kind that transforms not just behavior, but hearts. If you enjoyed this story of sweet revenge, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of entitled family members getting exactly what they deserve. Share your own stories in the comments below.